Oh, so funny, so funny. And
Really
speaking of funny things, Jerry,
Mm,
funnily enough, sometimes I'm able to pull strings way
hmm
beyond my sway,
I know this
way
about
beyond
you.
my power. I'm able to punch above my weight, so to
Hmm
speak. And in so doing, I have managed to get us a guest that I think is way beyond our caliber. In fact, before
Very
we started
exciting.
recording today, our guest was giving us tips on how to do a podcast, which we
Is
we're a
why
little
this
behind
one
the
is
curve.
already better. Yep.
Right. We probably should have taken that advice long before we started podcasting, but better
Right.
late than never. So dear listener, allow me to introduce to you the legendary Doreen Cumberford. Doreen, oh my goodness. It rather than me give a massive intro, I mean I'll give a little tiny one. I want to hear a little bit of your story because you're a consultant. You have several books out. You're an avid podcaster. What is it? You're up to 100 and it's around 150-ish
Almost
episodes.
in, yes, 147 episodes in 21 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which, oh my goodness, Jerry and I's work ethic, we we pale in comparison. We pale in
In the
comparison.
last 21 months? Yeah.
In the maybe.
Well, it's different. Come on, we're not comparing apples and oranges here. This is the one
No.
thing that I'm doing right now. You
Oh, but
guys
you
have day
do it
jobs,
well.
right?
You
Yeah.
do it so well. You do it so well, which
Yep.
is why
Yeah.
we
For
are
sure.
thrilled and privileged to have you here. Doreen is an expert in transition, in international lifestyle, in expats, in bringing together clever people to give advice to that area and community. She's dripping with clever advice herself, and so she's here to bring some knowledge and class to today's episode. So, Doreen, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks. No pressure. No
Yeah.
pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. It's fine. It's totally fine. It's totally fine.
It'd be
Doreen, let's
pressure if any bit of it wasn't true, right? Like
yeah.
yeah, you went low. I'm excited to hear more.
Which okay, so you've got several books out. We loads of podcast episodes. There's a lot of goodness to get into, but I want to hear just a little bit about your backstory, mostly because I feel a personal connection because I'm
Mm.
in Saudi Arabia right now, which features into your backstory.
It does. Yeah,
So
it
let's
does.
yeah, so
I'm also in Bakersfield, California, which also big part of your backstory. So
You guys,
basically,
right now, you are knitting my life together.
mhm.
And this is what it takes. It takes us building connections between all the places that we've been. I think for me, in order to feel completely whole and
Mhm.
to build the next story of our lives or whatever that narrative is going to look like. So we did leave from Bakersfield, California to go to Japan, well, to go to Los Angeles, then Japan, and ultimately Saudi Arabia for 15 years, where I wrote Life in the Camel Lane.
I love it. That's
which
such
is
a
such a
great
good
title.
title. Such a good
Hmm
title.
I have Life in the Expat Lane partially written, but I'm trying to make it sound literary, and I hold myself up by trying to sound wise. I just don't think I have that in me. But maybe one day that will erupt onto something.
Wise. I think you're
Yeah.
wise and approachable. I think you managed to do both, which,
Yeah.
that's
That's your
that's not to be
superpower.
sniffed at. Not to be sniffed
Superpowers,
at.
right? Like, wise and approachable. Why approachable?
Why approachable, if
Su
you will.
surprise? I don't know, that's not it. It's yeah.
Well, and okay, so locations are moving and everything. What got you into purveying wisdom? Because obviously, loads of people are expats, but
Yeah.
not everyone turns their experience into something that can be shared so widely and something that because you've managed to connect. I mean, the amount of guests you've had on your podcast, you've got books out. You've got another one you're working on, which we're going to talk about.
I do.
I'm
Yeah.
really excited about that actually. That's kind of what I want to focus on. But in the lead up to it, what persuaded you to be a purveyor of information to this community?
Well, this is my 50th year of being an expatriate and living outside of my native country, which was Scotland. And over those years, I have had so many different careers. Everything from I worked at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office as a junior diplomat to start with. Then I segued to corporate America in the oil business, where I met my husband. Then I've owned a design center when I was in Bakersfield, Jerry. I was an
Yes.
entrepreneur, came to the US, learned about entrepreneurship, opened a little design business in Bakersfield, which was just finding its feet
Mhm.
when we had the opportunity to go back to the Middle East. Now, it was back to the Middle East for me because my I had lived in Dubai. And in Dubai, I had learned Arabic and I had loved it. Ultimately, I left Dubai, but my husband had never been to the Middle East. So, you know, I feel like the luckiest person in the world to be my age, to have had this lifetime experience, and also to have had the benefits of AI and automation come together in podcasting. It was
Mm,
just magic.
mhm.
It all happened at once. The everything came together.
Yeah.
The experience, the AI, yeah.
Or maybe
Exactly.
you brought all of this on. Maybe this is just the part of your story that all of us get to be a part of. Um,
The
I
it
hope
it
so.
convergence.
you embody and really exemplify kind of a concept that we've talked about here and that like has been in my head for a long time. And it's really come out of seeing people with that story. Because there's this people where I come from, which this is kind of the whole point of our podcast, is Chris has this incredible TCK rich intercultural experience. I didn't I didn't go to Taco Bell until I was 18, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then left the country and that became a part of my story. But where I come from, there's a fear of that life, right? Like
Yes.
it feels very wishy-washy. It feels very it's scary. It doesn't feel stable. Like there's no stability because
Or
you keep
real.
moving all over the
Yes.
place. And it was like for me, it was something I had to wrestle through, but I saw people with a similar story to you who had done this their whole life and had something incredibly stable, as stable as a story like my father's, who was one place his whole life. People built around him, but I call him a pillar. So he was
Yes.
he was planted, he was there, and then I realized what I'm doing is um, like I'm laying bricks, one brick at a time, right? Like there is this brick and there's this part of the story, and then I move on to the next one, and and every brick has to be solid. Every like you can't just we're not just throwing bricks down. Some people are, and that ends up to be something that's not solid. But I saw these people who put so many different pieces of their life together and built
Mm.
something as solid as the people who were monocultural and stayed in one place and built
Yes.
their communities
Yeah.
around them. And I think it's really rich and beautiful to see somebody with your story, so many bricks, so many pieces of her story that has something like really solid. And I'm curious to hear you speak about kind of each not you don't have to say each step of the way, but what is it that you've put into every brick that has made your wall so solid? Like, what are the pieces that all of us can take from your experience that you would say even if you move every 3 years, like what
Mm.
needs to be the constant
Mm.
in each of
Exactly.
those? Yeah.
Okay. I think I have an answer. Henry David Thoreau said, "The price of anything is the amount of life we are willing to pay for it."
Oof.
So every time I go somewhere, I or am in an experience, I know that I'm giving up, 10 million
Mhm.
other choices.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I think I have learned how to pour myself into the moment and
Mm.
live in the now, no matter how challenging, how difficult, how misery making it was. And that didn't
Yeah.
happen. all the time or very often. But yes, there's been lots of challenges. But now that I have built up those muscles, it's almost
Mhm.
like building up a mental muscle in your mind. I think it's mental mindset building. Those blocks are part
Mhm.
of our mentality. And, we talk a lot in the expatriate lanes about moving and transition and the complexity of it. But how often do we talk about unpacking those invisible parts of us that need to be unpacked in order to find
Mhm.
solidity and solace right where we are?
Wow. Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
like that. The
So
idea of
good.
living in the now, because that is, I heard or read or saw, or who knows, somehow it floated into my brain the other day that one way to describe, anxiety is that you're living in the future.
Yes.
And I can't even remember what the word for living in the past was. I think it might have been, maybe regret or sadness, but it's very easy. It's very easy to
Yeah.
live in the past or to live in the future. And it's funny that since now is the only thing that's real, it's funny that that's the one that takes the challenge, that the living
Hmm.
actual
Exactly.
reality. And I think you're right. It's so much of it is a mindset, and I can't help but wonder, why is now such a challenge? What is it about us that would take anxiety, that would take living in the future and being worried about it, or that would take, regret and the past over the now? What is it? What is the funny thing about humans? That is it the pressure? Is it the pressure maybe?
I think it's a lot of things. Number one, I think that the technological age that we live in invites us out of our sensory experience of humanness. It invites
Hmm.
us into our heads a lot and sometimes our hearts,
Hmm.
but it's not a full-bodied experience. And I think it's in that full-body experience. I have in my physical DNA, I have cells that or I have brain cells that put together something called a memory of living in Cameroon, something called a memory of living in Dubai and Saudi Arabia and Japan and the US. And, it's just a construction.
Hmm.
And I think it's having the consistency to watch your mental gymnastics and be fully present in all the physical parts of it. Because I think that our senses, we kind of forget about them as expats because we're so excited about the novelty and the challenge and the
Hmm.
honeymoon. And we talk about that all the time. And I actually think there's something going on in the background that we also need to pay attention to. We're easily distracted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we
Yeah.
are. I am very easily distracted. That's a good point. And I like how you brought in technology, because there's such a balance to be struck. Like technology, incredibly helpful. I mean,
Oh, look
incredibly
at us.
helpful. Just
I
Well, and we're
love it.
exactly.
sitting
We can talk from three different parts of the world,
I
right.
love it.
all at once.
Yeah.
There's so much that we've been given, but there are
It's
challenges
incredible.
too.
Yeah. And we're sitting
Oh,
at this
absolutely.
place. Yeah. We're sitting at this place where more than ever, the whole world is really fascinated and curious and excited about the possibilities of the technological future, and at the same exact time, scared to death of what
Exactly.
the technological future can bring. You
Mm.
seem to have this is what I appreciate about you, Doreen, is just you really have the ability to balance the good and the bad, the hard and the exciting, and as you think about technology and what's coming for generations behind us, especially in an international space, like what comes to mind and what wisdom would you share with us?
I think that we mustn't forget our agency. I
Hmm.
really feel like we always have a choice. We have a choice who to be and how to be. And I think in this very fast-paced, exciting technological world, we sometimes forget the being part. And the being part
Mm-hmm.
is the human part. And it takes a wee bit longer to catch up sometimes. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that our humanity is going at the speed of AI. And
Oof.
so, what I see in the future is I see humans being it being necessary to have more and more facilitation and conversations like what both of you do. You are out there in the world and you are facilitating understanding and conversations and intimacy and closeness.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think we are going to require more of that in the future in
Mm-hmm.
order to in order to keep up with ourselves.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so true.
You hear that? We
And
need more Diesel and Clooney. More. We
Oh
that's right.
boy.
gotta record more episodes. Gotta record more
Oh,
episodes.
That's right.
Well, in fact,
Um,
Dory, you said so before we started recording. You said, and I love it so much that I want our listener, all I want all three of our listeners to hear you say it. But the idea, tell us what you said about being in people's ears.
oh, I love podcasting, and the reason that I built Nomadic Diaries and created Nomadic Diaries, which the name of which might change, I have to give you a heads up on that.
mm,
Oh, you heard it here
But
first.
yeah, here, first time. And I think it's a very intimate experience. Now, when
mhm,
people are on a podcast, I don't expect my listeners to be sitting here focused on a screen and a table watching a
mhm,
video. I imagine my listeners walking the dog,
mhm,
washing the dishes, doing some sort of a chore. And I think that's the most intimate experience to be able to be in someone's ears when they are supposedly distracted, because it's not really distraction. I think it's processing. Our
mhm,
brains get a rest when we're doing the dishes. They get a little bit of a rest when we're going for a walk. And so that's a time I think when we can implant messages of positivity and possibility. And that's all I want Nomadic Diaries to do is
mm,
to
mhm,
invite expats and nomads and the globally mobile communities into an experience of building something better towards their dreams and goals with some sort of philosophy or strategy or thinking, and get to do that by landing in people's ears, and it's
mm.
intimate.
It is intimate. Yeah.
Oh,
Mm,
it's such a good noble pursuit. I love it. We
yeah.
did. Jerry and I only just started doing video, so we've taken it up a notch. We just don't want to be people. We want people to still walk their dog. We just want to have them do it with us, so they bump into things. We still want them to be doing the washing up, but we want them to
I
Right. We want them to
yeah.
have
do a
access.
terrible job with dishes
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
focused on
Now,
us.
I think that the video part of it is important because I think it builds know, like, and trust. People
Mhm,
get to know us through video. They can, they only need to watch a couple of videos and they can listen to all of your podcasts and they can
mhm,
imagine your gestures. They can imagine your eyes twinkling. They can imagine the nod of the head. And
mhm,
I think the video definitely has a place, but not for me right now. And that's
yeah.
also because I'm technology challenged.
Well,
I
aren't we
mean,
all? Yeah.
Aren't we all?
I'm very
Aren't we all?
challenged by
We
by
could all stand up.
technology. It's amazing I get a podcast out every week.
Yeah.
It's a bloody miracle, actually.
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on, Doreen, and I think like we would be really unaware, I think, to say that anybody really sits down and watches us moment to moment all the way through. That's not how people absorb podcasts, but it is nice to be able to see, and we want to offer that to them.
Yeah,
But I think you're right. I think and there's something to me. I know this is how I work, and I think a lot of people work like me because I think we've moved into kind of an ADHD
yes,
age, right? Like
yes,
where we are,
yeah,
our attention is so many different places at one time. And what I've found is that if you can consume most of my brain with something else and at the same time speak wisdom into it, I'm able to consume that a lot. If I can mow the lawn and listen to a podcast at the same time, even though it's loud, I'm gonna take away more of that, and I'm also gonna have these thoughts of what to do with this, and I'll like I do my best thinking when I'm mowing a lawn, when I'm driving a car, when I've got something else
Yes,
distracting much of my brain. And I think there's something really rich and you're right, intimate about because it's kind of a sacred space when you get that last part of someone's mind that is paying attention and is really
exactly.
absorbing and consuming and
Mm.
regurgitating that into new thoughts and ideas. And so I do think that audio is undersold in a video age, right?
I definitely think so, but I also believe that there's something about the component of the conscious and the subconscious mind.
Now we're going
And
deep.
sorry?
Now we're going deep. Let's go. Where I'm ready.
Oh no, I don't know that I want to go this deep, and I'll just
Well,
sound like a
of course you
woo-woo,
do.
you know. I mean, and I do believe in a certain amount of woo. I think it's
Mhm.
important to have. I think it's important to have one own version of woo or philosophy,
Yeah.
and I think that that's the benefit of living across cultures
Mm,
is being able to define what are my values and am
mhm.
I in alignment with my values, with my actions.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when my husband and I decided to move to Mexico at the tender ages of, I don't know, 60 something and 70 something, it was not it was an easy decision. Decisions are usually easy because what you're doing is you're cutting everything else away.
Mhm.
When you make that decision, everything else is gone. And the decision was easy, but the process without the benefit of a government or a corporation moving us was quite different. And we're only moving basically next door.
Yeah.
However, it was a very big challenge for us, and I gained a lot of insight. The last chapter in my book in Unsettled is called Hindsight and Foresight Towards Insight. And so, as expats, we can use the lessons that we've gained and the cultural insights we've gained in our past, but we also have the benefit of, using our six mental faculties to sort of build forward something in
Mm,
our lives to imagine a new direction. And so that's the foresight. And what that does is combining them builds our insight. And once we have our insight plus a decision, then it's much easier to do these great, big, crazy moves around the world.
that's brilliant. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It does. Yeah. I mean, it does to me. I don't know about Chris.
You- I
Chris?
well,
Sometimes I catch things and they just
it's true. There's nothing to catch. There's nothing to catch over here. So things fly by. No, I'm so glad, and it's such a good segue. Just because I wanted to ask you about your new book, which you just mentioned is
Yeah,
titled Unsettled, which is that's a
yeah.
I feel it's a bold title just
I
because
want to
it
read
kind of
it
flies in the
already.
face
Yeah.
of what most people are looking for is okay, how do I manage? How do I deal with? How do I settle? How do I? And
Mhm.
so, tell us more. Tell us how you picked the name. Tell us obviously
Mm.
we'll have to read the book to get all of the good knowledge, but give us the
Well,
summary, give us the tease.
like me, the book has had a few journeys over about 6 years,
Mhm.
and it started off as home again, jiggity jig, which
I
is
would read that too. I would read that too. So
a childhood nursery rhyme, an English childhood nursery rhyme. And then my editor and I, we were going deeper. Oh, we've got to make this deeper. So let's make it sequel, like a movie production. So you come home and you write the sequel of your life. Well, also a great title now, right? And then
Mhm.
one day I went to an American Indian production they talked about losing their land. And I had such an unsettled feeling when I left that production.
Mm.
And it just really stayed with me. And I thought, what if we have this label on unsettled as being bad? What
Mm,
if unsettled could be the most productive, the most creative, the most generative time of our lives?
mm,
Instead of this, oh, I'm moving all the time and I'm unsettled. Well, what if we
mm.
could find in those unsettled moments a
Yeah.
solid rock, like a gray rock place
Mhm.
inside of us that is just deadly dull and boring, but absolutely connected to our core? Doesn't have to be all bells and whistles this journey.
Yeah.
What if unsettled could give us another aspect of life that is generative? And so that's why I kind of landed and decided I'm going to
Mhm.
stick with this.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
Oh,
But
I'm glad you did. I feel like it is because it turns on its head, the assumption that unsettled is something to be gotten through. I think we
Mhm.
hear that and there's just generally okay, like I'll survive the unsettled bit because afterward I can get to fill in the blank.
Mhm.
When when I do, I think even as you were talking, I look back and I think, yeah, some of my most creative moments really were born out of being unsettled. That there really is. There's almost an energy and a gumption there. In fact, the majority of my book was written in transit. That I actually found I wrote best in airports and on planes, and
Mhm.
the majority of my writing occurred at hundreds of miles an hour. Uh,
Yeah.
and which obviously, physically unsettled is just a part of it. But yeah, the fact that there's creativity in that, I mean, chaos might be too strong a word, but the fact that there's creativity maybe in the places we don't expect, that's a drive that, yeah, maybe we don't harness near as much as we should.
Yeah.
And look at your story, Jerry. I mean,
Yeah.
we all watched you as you moved from China to Malta and then ultimately to my old hometown in Bakersfield. And
Yeah.
I was not privy to the insides of that, but boy, I felt that. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I felt the challenges of that. And look what you're building. Look at all these great bricks and your children going off
Yeah.
to college. I mean, I can only imagine
Yeah.
that was generative. Is that true for you?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think this is what, again, I think looking at you and seeing the picture of your experience really speaks to those lessons I've learned as well through this is that, and something I knew before, but learned in a whole new way through this one, because this one was hard, right? Like this one had new
Yeah.
layers of challenge and chaos. We threw a pandemic in the middle of it, which that was us, by
Yes.
the way. We threw
Just
that
for
in there
kicks.
just to see,
Oh,
just to
thanks a
test out
lot.
our, yeah.
Just for kicks.
But that idea, um, and it's actually something I spoke about at my father's funeral. Him the pillar, me the brick, right?
Mm,
One is the perfect number, one of everything. You get one piece of land, one strong relationship, one group of friends, one job for your entire. And me, I don't do one of anything. But what he showed me was that stability wasn't about the one thing, right? Like it wasn't about what was around you. Stability was something that was internal, right? And
exactly.
if you can remain stable internal, which is what I think you have shown us all, right? Like because there are lots of people who have moved around a lot and their lives have been a mess, right? Like they don't see the
I
good
am
in it.
right
They don't
here,
see the
Jerry.
richness in
I'm
it.
right here.
Yeah,
And I
that's
am
not true. That's not true.
trying.
You're as stable as
Here
you carry
too.
that same thing,
I'm just
Chris.
kidding.
But
I mean, yeah.
Just
I
kidding.
mean,
I'm just kidding.
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, here we are sharing our mess,
yeah,
but
yeah,
our messes are really showing our vulnerability and our
yeah,
humanness. Because mine
absolutely.
has not been perfect.
Of course.
I lost a marriage to repatriation,
Hmm.
and I never had a grandmother because my grandmother died when she repatriated back to Scotland.
Wow.
And that really spoke to me eventually. I was like, wait a minute. And I was dislocated from my house when I was a child because my uncle had gone to Burma, married a Burmese woman, and had all these. My cousins are all 50% Burmese. And they were coming home to Scotland, and my mom and dad decided to sell our house, and they moved into our house. That was a repatriation experience. And I put that all together and
Mm.
went, oh, crikey, this process, not the individual events, but the process itself
Yeah.
has really been messy for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we all, I mean, we're all screw ups in some way, and it's okay because that's our human side.
hmm And
I
that's
do
so
love, by the
rich.
way, I have to point out how much how good Doreen is at what she does because she's interviewing us at this point. Like I don't know if
Yeah,
we
yeah,
even
I
caught
noticed that.
I
I
don't know if
noticed
we
that as
even
well.
caught. She's so good at this that
Yeah.
she's interviewing us, which I mean it is we'll obviously put it on the podcast page, but it's definitely worth a listen to heading over to Nomadic Diaries.
Yeah.
Because Doreen is she's such an expert. I mean, with that, and we've already been talking about it a bit, but with the unsettled book coming, which I'm very excited about because I think it's a great concept, and helps us tap into creativity. But with your great interviewing skills and everything, and you have such a back catalog of interviews,
hmm
of guests, of wisdom on again almost 150 episodes. What would you say, looking back at that vast catalog? What are some of the either surprising bits that came out that kind of shocked you from your guests, or bits that stand out?
I think there's three things. I think that there's a process of falling in love with life.
mm
And there's a process of falling in love with the difficult. There's a
Hmm.
process of being uncomfortable, but learning to live with discomfort, living outside of that 4% out of our comfort zone. And so I think that's very important. Another surprising, so I've fallen in love with my guests.
mm hmm
I've fallen in love with their stories. I'm curious. I feel like I know nothing. And so I try to come from the perspective of what can you teach me? What can we learn? What do we need to iron into our souls? This
mm
cellular side of us, this invisible side of us. What do we need to iron into it in order for it to really make a difference, not only in our lives, but in the lives of all these people who live this roughshod transitional experience? So
mm
falling in love, what was the second one I said? I forgot already. And um, just the variety and the joy and the pride that shows up for everyone who has made a big decision, who
hmm
has made a decision, cut everything else away, and they're willing to come on and tell their story. And I try to treat people's stories as sacred. And that's one of the things that we're not really good about nowadays is, everybody at some level has a narrative. And if we can learn to treat our own narrative and our own messy experiences as sacred, well,
hmm
just imagine, I am just overwhelmed by gratitude that I get to hear and talk to all these amazing people.
Yeah. Which is why you've been like such a I think such an influence and had such an impact on so many other people because you've been willing to you've recognized something that no matter how much wisdom or insight any one of us has, it's finite, right? Like there's an end
Yeah.
to it. But when you can sit and listen to the people around you, and then kind of be a conveyor of that wisdom to the broader population, then you've got like an endless pool. Like you've tapped into something that you can really encourage and help other people connect to that's way beyond even the wisest, right? Like even the wisest person, there's only so much you can give. And I think that's been really one of the beautiful things that we've all watched you do is you don't even though you've got all that wisdom, you don't just sit down and share it. You say, hey, listen to what this person has to say and let's hear this person's story. And it's not about finding the wisest and the smartest. It's recognizing that everybody has a story and all of us can learn from each of those. And I think that's a lesson that I've learned in watching
Yeah.
you and others, but it's really beautiful.
Well, I kind of wish that I could do a series with you guys, 10 podcasts, because I have so many questions for you. I'm like,
She's so good. She's so good.
See
really,
what
I
she
have
does. Yeah.
so many questions because your stories and your experiences are, you know, out there making light bulb moments for people around the globe, for teachers, for executives, for students. And I think that is the light that needs to be, here I go, woo woo again. That's the light that needs to be shared. Just call me Doreen Woo.
My
Uh,
favorite quote so far has been there need to be a certain number of woos.
Yeah,
And so it's like, hey, maybe two's not enough. Maybe it's not, maybe it's
might
woo,
need
woo,
more
woo,
woo.
woo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reps. And some of the woo is found in the unsettled. I'm just throwing it out there. There's
Yeah,
there's woo to be
absolutely.
found in the unsettled.
well, do you think that people are paying attention, or how much attention are people paying when they're in this churn and they're managing a big job and their families and
Mhm.
they're trying to maintain a balance of, corporate life? Jerry, you're shaking your head. Tell me, what's it, how much time do people have to unpack what's really going on for them?
Yeah, it just really jumps out to me that I think people are focused on what's happening, especially when things are happening to them, right?
Yeah.
When they don't feel a sense of control and they don't
Yeah.
feel, which is transition and moving from
Yeah.
place to place and global living and all. There are moments, there have to be moments where you're just completely out of control. And meanwhile, there's a whole story going on around you that you can't even see in the moment, right? Um,
Yeah.
but but pausing whenever you can breathe, whenever you have the opportunity, and sitting and processing that with other people, right? And saying
Yeah.
what just happened. Like we all went through this thing with the pandemic. It shook up our lives and changed changed everything for everyone, right? Which is
Mhm.
not exactly true. I actually call people on that. Anytime you say everything is changing, not
Mm.
everything is, right? Some of the things remained incredibly constant, and that's part of this is finding the things that don't change when it feels like everything is. But you have to kind of get out of that for a moment, long enough to be able to breathe, and then you can look back and recognize it. And if you don't, you move on with just trauma, right? Like with just the pain of what happened to you instead of the lessons and the wisdom and the beauty and the things that you
Mm.
talk about. I think
Mm.
that's really the beauty of going through good things and hard things.
Well, I think that is the beauty. I also do think that, I'm really up for the challenge of being the elderly, white, privileged, biased expat
Hmm. Good,
because
because we need you.
that is a life that I was so lucky to live.
Hmm.
But I didn't consciously call it in. I mean, I made a
Right.
lot of decisions that just landed me in a geopolitical situation in the time of the world when things were happening. I was in Dubai when the embassy in Iran was stormed and watched it from pretty,
Mhm.
but of course we didn't have hour by hour news back then. But I've come pretty close to some of these, I think, very important moments in our history. And I think that it's only after taking the time and really finding your own wisdom and really settling into what is it that is your core?
Mhm.
Where are you willing to adapt? What are you not willing to give up? And aligning yourself, body, mind, and spirit with your values.
Yeah.
That's the only way that we can move forward. And I know both of you, that's your message, right?
Mm. Yeah. We hope so. And sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But in the
Yeah.
context of all of those things together, hopefully that's what comes out. Because there are absolute, and when you're in that moment when something big is happening in the world and it's dangerous and you just happen to be close to it, you're not thinking about what are the insights I can take from this moment and shit. You're thinking, how do I keep myself safe and how do I keep my family safe and what do we need to do here and is it what we wanted? Is it not? Like all
Yeah.
of those big things in the moment. And then
Yeah.
later you look back and you say, wow, I got to experience that and came through it in one piece, but also learned a lot from it. And I
Hmm.
think that's
And
the
I'm,
richness of this life.
yeah, and I'm humbled,
Hmm.
absolutely humbled by the way life turns out.
Yeah. Mm. Such good words.
The discipline to look back on it too, because it's
Mhm.
because not everybody does,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
not even whether it's that they haven't been trained well how to do it, or whether sometimes it's just a pain aversion that yeah it takes some discipline to go, ooh, that was rough. I should look back through that because it's way easier to go, ooh, that was rough. I'm gonna
Mhm.
box that away and shove it in a closet and won't deal with it. But going
That's
back
true.
again to how much I love the title Unsettled,
Mhm.
um, even looking back at the unsettled bits, that's there is stuff to be gleaned, and that opens up even you're so good at drawing out people's stories, um, sometimes through your own, and again,
Mhm.
you're interviewing us on on our podcast. That's how good you are. But
Yeah.
but I think in that it's some of that is giving people the freedom and almost the encouragement to walk with them as they unpack some stuff
Mhm.
because life is constantly happening. Um, but yeah, I think what you're saying about technology and how busy people get, the discipline of
Mm,
being of finding
mm.
the time, prioritizing it, and even being willing to unpack,
Reflect.
Mhm.
and
Mm.
reflect. I
Yeah.
think, and maybe that was easier before, when we didn't have so many things to distract us. But my goodness, we have a lot to distract us now.
Mhm.
It's super easy to not unpack because you can just be like, oh, that was rough. Gonna put it in a box and move on to something fun.
Mhm.
And
But
I think the subtitle speaks to that a bit. It's like when home doesn't feel like home.
oh,
That's the
that's good.
subtitle. And it's going to be
Mm.
like, I don't know, something about a guide to expats moving home or something. And
Mhm.
I think that that is an experience that many more people are tapping into nowadays is
Mhm.
home doesn't feel like home. It doesn't even matter if you've been an expat or not in some
Right.
ways,
Right.
but
Yeah.
particularly, there's an expectation of home. And how many people, I'm in Seattle right now, and I come here for a health and well-being checkup and visit my daughter every year for a couple of months. And, the number of people who are homeless.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I,
Yeah.
I just wonder I'm very interested in hearing everybody's opinions and what is home? What does it mean? Is it a place? Is it a
Mhm.
feeling? There's just a lot to dig into there.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
Well.
Wholeheartedly agree. And there is you touched on too the importance of joy. I think you're very good at being able to find joy in the struggle, and I admire people who can do that. It maybe I thought about so I'm here in Saudi where it's very hot. I don't deal well with the heat. I just don't. I'm not built for it. And I
I
can remember
didn't.
it wasn't even here. This was somewhere else, and I was with a family, and we were out in the sun, which I'm less of a fan of, but everyone else enjoys it. So I'm like, all right, I'll go. And wherever I was sweating. I was sweating, and sweat drips off of my head. And one of the family I was with, one of the kids looked over me. They were like, look, Uncle Chris's sweat makes designs on the ground. And they did. The kids
Oh,
came running over and they thought it was the greatest thing. And I was like, all right, there's a lesson here because here I am, I'm counting down the seconds. I'm like, please, for the love, can we just get into the shade, get me in some air conditioning? I'm sweating. I hate it. But the perspective, like I said, someone, a little kid was able to find joy in it. They're like, oh, Uncle Chris's sweat makes designs on the ground. And I was like, oh,
that's
okay.
great. It's finding those moments in
But it
the
is, it's yeah, it's finding the designs in the sweat. That's what I'm going with.
and
Yeah.
that's a mental practice.
Yeah.
That
And
is
kids
discipline.
seem to have it and we lose it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And Chris, there's the title of your next book, Finding Designs in the Sweat.
Finding
Yep.
designs
I
in
love it.
sweat. Look, we've come so far in just
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
episode. I think, Doreen, I think you're right. We might just have to do a whole series more.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Might just have to do a
No,
series
I
more.
wasn't inviting myself on, but I just have so many questions for you.
Yeah. And that's why you're here, right? Like that's why we wanted to talk to you. You mentioned before we wrap this up, I really don't want to leave without hearing you speak more to this because you mentioned just the impact of humility through all of this, which I think
Oh,
makes is a trajectory setter, right? If you approach a challenging time with humility or without humility, it takes you, excuse me, it takes you into two completely different directions, and the place that you end up ends up dramatically different. Um, if you could
mm.
brag on your humility just for, no, I'm just kidding.
I don't want to
If you
exactly.
could just, if you could just speak more to what you've learned about humility and why it matters.
I think that at some level, it's our humanity. And I think the fact that both words start with HUM, humility and humanity,
See what she did
perhaps
there? Yep.
perhaps are perhaps related.
Hmm.
And I think that along with being humble, makes us be a bit teachable. I have so much to learn about putting out a podcast, and oh my, and where are my
Hmm.
people, and oh, I'm doing the seven deadly sins all at once, and what the hell are they, and why do I care about them? And so this is going on all the time, right? But being willing to be teachable and slow down the action. Now, I have to say, being in my seventh or eighth decade now, I think that always being willing to learn is where humility
Yeah.
ultimately wants to take us. I think humility, is like a leash on a dog. Where are we going then? Humility, if humility is the leash, I hope that it's taking me to learn,
Hmm.
towards learning to be a more compassionate, understanding, and maybe not interesting, but compassionate and understanding human, because
Mm.
then that's where our basic connection's that's where we're gonna feel it in our heart, right? And when we
Yeah.
feel it in our heart, then we know when we're home.
Ooh.
Wow.
Oh, that was good.
That was
Oh,
good. Yeah. Yep.
I don't think we could have wrapped
I,
it up any better.
I feel like we're there. Yeah, that was a great landing.
Doreen should probably be producing all of our podcasts. Let's not kid
And
ourselves.
yeah, you got the job.
Oh,
Sure.
genuine. We will. We'll have to have you back. Seriously. But thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us. And are there any estimates on when
No,
Unsettled will be? No.
no more commitments.
No
Good.
No more
commitments.
commitments. I'm just
It'll
going to
happen
let
when
it.
it happens.
Another lesson
Yes,
learned.
yes. I'll let everybody know when it happens. Thank you so much, guys, for your
Mm.
time, because I know I can only imagine how much you're juggling. And I appreciate you doing this. And I appreciate your specific genius. It's like you two have a zone of genius that lines up. And that zone of genius is the joy and the fun and the laughter. And let's just plan on planting more of that in the global mobility lanes.
Love it.
I'm on
Yeah.
board. I'm on board.
Yeah.
Definitely improved at my level.
Yeah. Hey, last thing, Doreen, if people want to connect with you, see your
Oh,
stuff, learn more about you, how do they do that?
that's a good question. My website, of course, is changing, but I have a Doreen Cumberford, Cumberford, website, but probably Nomadic Diaries.
Mhm.
And it's on all of the Apple and Spotify and wherever they listen to their podcasts. That's probably the easiest place to find me. And there is nomadicdiaries.com, that website.
Excellent. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Well, we will. We'll make sure and list it in the show notes as well. But
Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
thank you.
joining us. We'll do it again. We'll do it again.
Yeah,
And thank you,
absolutely.
dear listener, for joining us. We do hope you've enjoyed, and we cannot recommend enough heading over to Nomadic Diaries. Again, there's a massive catalog for you to listen to with all kinds of wisdom.
Mhm.
So take this as the little teaser, the little appetizer, if you will. And we do hope you'll join us again soon. Thanks so much for being with us.